Well, we can all warmly welcome 2021, even as we can all agree that we're happy to see 2020 go. A year few will miss and no one will forget. For all of us, each in our own way, and in some ways for all of us in the same way, it was a difficult year, to say the least. The spring was a very stressful experience, somewhat shocking too. We had the rapid shutdown of our lives, constantly unsure of what else would be taken away from us, daily navigating work and school, family and friends, making it all up as we went along through a changing landscape of rules and regulations. Dire warnings on the one hand, flat out doubt and denial on the other, most of us left in between, wondering what's what. It was stressful and exhausting. I remember going home most evenings during that period exhausted, even though it felt like I wasn't actually doing anything or accomplishing anything. I felt exhausted. Then summer came and seemed to bring a little relief. The virus didn't go away, but leveled out, at least here in Maryland. Some of the restrictions were lifted. School was out, kids were out and about. Some people went on vacations, pools and golf courses were open. Restaurants had outdoor and eventually indoor dining. Friends found a way to gather in backyards and patios and driveways. Our church was able to reopen, and we did so safely and successfully, as we have continued to do so, and I'm very happy and proud about that. As these things were happening, some of us began to hold out hope that the current situation would change in the fall. But fall turned to winter and nothing changed. And so our hopes turned to the new year, and here it is, and here we are. Of course, we all want some kind of return to normal, and I think we would all also acknowledge it is at the same time impossible for the last 10 months not to have changed us substantially. COVID has brought changes to the way we live, to the way we work, to the way we shop, to the way we travel, to the way we gather, to the way we worship. Changes that are in some instances here to stay. For instance, pre-COVID, Nativity was a physical church on Ridgely Road with, by the way, it just so happened, an online service that several dozen people each week would use, mostly for the convenience of those who were traveling or the homebound. COVID has blown that up. Our online presence has grown exponentially in the past 10 months. And while gathering in person to celebrate and receive the Eucharist is elemental to who we are as Catholics, moving forward, the virus notwithstanding, I think a lot more people are going to choose to join us a lot more often online. Here's my point. We have to be careful about falling into magical or wishful thinking that there's a finish line to all of this, or a single date that marks the end. We have to be careful about thinking that a new year is going to be the solution. I do believe that we will see a return to much of what we have lost, including normal human interaction, which I very much look forward to. I just don't put much confidence in when. Have you ever heard of the Stockdale paradox? The Stockdale paradox. In his book, Good to Great, Jim Collins tells the story of Admiral James Stockdale, who was a POW during the Vietnam War. Collins asked him, "It just seems so bleak, the uncertainty of your fate, the brutality of your captors. How on earth did you deal with it. Stockdale explained, I never doubted not only that I would get out, but also that I would prevail in the end and turn the experience into a defining event of my life. Collins then asked, who didn't make it out? Stockdale replied, the guys who lived by the calendar. The ones who said, we're going to be out by Christmas. And Christmas would come and Christmas would go. And then they would say, we're going to be out by Easter. And Easter would come and Easter would go. And then it was Thanksgiving, and then it would be Christmas again. Those guys, they died of broken hearts. Stockdale concluded, this is a very important lesson. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never lose sight of, with the discipline to confront the facts of your current reality. It seems to me there's another paradox for us to consider too that is like the Stockdale paradox. While so much of life is out of our control, we still have agency, we still have autonomy, we still have much that we can control. While it's very tempting to focus our energy and attention on what's been taken away from us, we still have the ability to set our own priorities, follow our own agenda. And people and organizations and families and churches who grasp this truth, I think, will not only survive through current circumstances, but thrive. In psychology, this difference is called the locus of control. The locus of control. People who focus on what they can control and take responsibility for their lives and choices have an internal locus of control. People who focus on external factors for what happens to them have, obviously enough, an external locus of control. They believe that the government or the economy or public policy or other family members determine the quality and direction of their lives for them. They give up their autonomy and freedom to these outside forces. And sometimes, as a result, they experience higher levels of frustration, anxiety, doubt, depression. People, on the other hand, who focus on what they can control, study after study shows, are happier, healthier, and often more successful. As author Stephen Covey put it, it's the difference between what we could call our circle of concern and our sphere of influence. All of us enjoy both, a circle of concern and a sphere of influence. Our circle of concern is huge. It's as big as the whole wide world. And as a result of a 24-hour news cycle and social media, we are as informed about that wide world as we choose to be. And oftentimes, that information creates concern for us. We become concerned. These concerns are real, they're legitimate, and they're also useless. Because most times we can do very little, oftentimes nothing at all, about our concerns. I'm concerned. I'm genuinely concerned. I'm concerned about division and discord in our country, deforestation in the Amazon, rebuilding Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. I'm concerned about those things, but I can't do anything about them. If I focus too much of my thought and energy on those kinds of concerns, I'm going to end up feeling frustrated, helpless. However, if I focus more of my energy and attention on my sphere of influence, unity and charity here in our parish, care for the environment in our community, proper maintenance for this church building, If I focus my energy and attention on my sphere of influence, I'm going to be emotionally stronger and healthier and probably in a better place spiritually. Here's what I think we need to hear stepping into 2021. No one is going to give you your life back. You have to take it back. You have to be proactive. You can't wait for this to go away. You've got to step confidently into 2021. The question is, where do I start? You know, this is an interesting time. Some people are overwhelmed right now by having to do too much. If you're a parent with elementary school children, you probably have too much to do. Or maybe you feel overwhelmed because you don't have too much to do. You don't know what to do. Other people are overwhelmed by Zoom fatigue and just figuring out how to do their job in this environment. Some people are overwhelmed because their business is taken off. It's a boom time for them. But that's all also full of stress and tension. And sadly, others are overwhelmed just trying to keep their business going. And many of us, most all of us, are overwhelmed because so many healthy outlets are gone and cherished traditions put on hold. The question becomes, where do I start? And the short answer, I think, comes down to priorities. To be proactive with your priorities. Now, if all of this is starting to sound like something you'd hear at a business seminar or motivational conference, that's because it is. Priorities are important in business. Priorities are important for successful living. Priorities are also important in faith. Our faith tells us that priorities are incredibly important, and God actually wants to work with us in helping to set them. You and I are not all alone and on our own to figure out how to set priorities for your life. Faith can help you determine them. Ideally, in a community of faith like our church, which can support you. And that's what this series is all about. So to help us get started on this Feast of the Epiphany, we meet again those famous figures, the Magi, the wise men. The Magi were from Persia, modern-day Iran. They were astronomers who closely tracked the movement of heavenly bodies and claimed to read them as omens of earthly events. The Magi served as advisors to the king and his court. And at one point, they were so respected and revered in Persia that they were considered the power behind the throne. Thus, the common designation of the Magi as kings. The wise men were experts on the stars. They studied them every night. And one night, they saw something unusual, something they'd never seen before. Matthew tells us the story. When Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of King Herod, behold, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star and have come to do him homage." So they see a star in the east that's unlike anything they've ever seen before. So they pay attention to it. They study it. The idea of stars signaling the birth of a great person or a great event was a common, a popular idea in the ancient world. There are lots of different theories on the star and what it was. Was it Halley's Comet, a supernova, a planetary conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, such as we witnessed in December? Who knows? Whatever the natural or supernatural causes, the Magi made it a priority to follow the star where it led and discover the truth that it held. Once in Jerusalem, they of course make inquiry with the king. Where, they wonder, is the new king? Not a question the old king appreciates at all. When the King Herod heard this, he was greatly troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Assembling all the chief priests and the scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. And you know how the story goes. Herod tells the wise men to find the child and report back to him, because his goal is to destroy the child. In the end, the Magi follow the star, find the child, and experience the joy of their newfound faith. In a dream, God warns them to stay away from Herod, and so they go home by another route. Herod, in his anger and fear, proceeds to undertake a brutal, bloody slaughter. The passage introduces two contrasting responses to the same event. On the one hand, the Magi respond to the star with intellectual curiosity. Herod responds with fear. The Magi seek truth in humility. Herod seeks to suppress the truth. The Magi are successful in what they set out to do. Herod fails utterly in all his scheming. The Magi successfully set their priorities and stuck to them. And as a result, they discover a loving relationship with the living Lord. On the other hand, Herod had no priorities. We find him in the story over and over again simply reacting. Despite the fact that he's king, he comes across as full of fear and helpless. Who knows what the new year will be or bring? It's important to stay positive, for sure, but really, if we're being entirely honest with ourselves, nobody really knows. It's not up to us. We have no choice. We have no choice when it comes to public health policies, state regulations, economic downturns, civil unrest. We have no choice. What we do get to choose are our priorities. Our priorities. Our priorities can be like the Magi star, guiding us through 2021. So, here are two commitments that I invite you to make to take advantage of this series. First commitment, make this series a priority in your schedule. Make it a priority to join us for this series all 7 weeks, live and in person here on Ridgely Road or online. Commit to the whole of this series. Take this journey with us. You know, each of these message series that we offer are rather like a little journey. And if you commit to it and stick with it, at the end, you find yourself in a different place than where you started. The second commitment is to do the homework we'll be giving each week. This week is just a basic exercise of setting your priorities in a very deliberate, specific kind of way. On our website, we have a resource to coach you through that exercise if you want help. You know, the Magi teach us a very important lesson, really a life lesson. Everybody gets somewhere in life, but wise people get somewhere on purpose.
I believe